America. It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome in. It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. I'm Blake Murphy. I'm Blake Murphy7 on X/Twitter. And we're joined today with Kyle Odegaard, who is former Arizona Cardinals beat writer, current Cardinals Insider, and right now is writing for, I believe, great offshore sports books, as well as a couple other places. Kyle, we're here to talk the 2025 NFL draft, which is almost here. How are you doing, and how are you feeling as the Arizona Cardinals are approaching yet another big, huge day in the franchise?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and I think, like everybody, waiting for Thursday to finally get here. Feels like it always takes forever for the draft to get here, and then it's gone flash. But yeah, it should be a fun day Thursday, and obviously the last 2 days as well.
Yeah, Cardinals have 6 picks through the first 7 rounds of the NFL draft, with one of those picks being traded. They've made quite a few offseason moves already as well. They've brought in a couple of guys back. They've brought in a newly revamped edge rush and defensive lineman room, and they've made a couple of acquisitions that maybe weren't timed the way that fans would have wanted, but have done a good job, I think, of actually kind of going for it this year. Let's talk about just some of those acquisitions. You've got things like Calais Campbell coming in. They've got a new linebacker in Akeem Davis-Gaither. Josh Sweat being obviously the biggest move. With these acquisitions, what were some of the moves that you liked, or if you had to pick one move that's kind of that standout move, is it Josh Sweat, or are we talking about something else that you liked better?
I like the defensive tackle moves. I think Dalvin Tomlinson and Calais Campbell, bringing those two guys in to really help that group out, because obviously there was no pass rush on the interior. The run defense wasn't great. I mean, they just had such a lack of talent at that spot. And I'm glad that they didn't just say, hey, Darius Robinson was a first-round pick. We're slotting him in, and he's going to be a star, because we didn't see that last year. He had injuries. We don't know what he's going to become. So they have a lot of reinforcements there, and they can rotate guys. As I got a lot of reaction from online, I didn't love the Josh Sweat move. I thought, okay, this is the offseason to go for it. I wanted them to do a humongous splash somewhere, and they added a lot of good players, and their depth is better. I'm just a fan of like superstars, and I think they change games when you have a superstar on the defensive lines, whether that's Trey Hendrickson or going for somebody. I think Milton Williams can maybe get there, just be this absolute game wrecker. I don't think Josh Sweat is in that category. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's, they're going to be their most consistent edge player for sure. He's the most talented one as far as run and edge rushing. But I don't know. I would like to see if he can get you 10 sacks. And if he can't, I feel like that's going to be the issue on that defensive front. I think you have a lot better depth now, but do you have that superstar that can really get double teams, allow other guys to rush, beat double teams? I mean, I don't know if they have that guy on the front yet. And that was the one that I didn't love. But overall, I think Monty did a nice job of definitely adding talent to that defense, and it's going to be a much improved defense.
I think I agree, and that's something where like it's Milton Williams at $25 million a year, Josh Sweat at $20 million a year. Free agency has always been a place where you're going to have to overpay to be able to get in talent, and guys who make it to free agency and aren't kept by their teams, often there can be kind of a push-pull when it comes to how you improve your roster. Ultimately, the draft, I think, is where you're going to be able to find that talent, like you said, needing to kind of get that superstar talent on a lower contract. The one move that I've seen some fans have talked about, and this kind of goes back to Kyler Murray as far as expectations, Cardinals brought in a veteran quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. He's familiar with Drew Petzing's system from Cleveland, seems to fit a lot of what you look for in a backup quarterback, has some athleticism. Feels like that this is one of those good moves that's going to give Arizona kind of that backup quarterback they haven't had since Colt McCoy went and retired. What do you think as far as with that move that Arizona made, and how do you feel ultimately about Kyler Murray heading into this year?
Yeah, I mean, they're lucky last year that Kyler stayed healthy for every game, because if it was Clayton Tune time at any point, you could have almost chalked up a loss no matter who they were playing, because it's such a downgrade. I mean, Clayton Tune is probably going to be better than what he showed against Cleveland, but he's clearly not a backup quarterback in the NFL. So I think it was smart to get Jacoby Brissett. You want Kyler to stay healthy, but hardly anybody can play all 17 games consistently. So if he misses one or two, you've got a guy that can keep it afloat, and you can win a game with Jacoby Brissett. Very similar, like you said, Colt McCoy, Drew Stanton, guys that aren't going to win the game for you, but they're not going to necessarily lose it before you even get on the field. So they can play decently enough. And I mean, as far as Kyler goes, I think we saw a lot of good things last year. I think he showed that this offense is a good fit for him. I think I would like to still see more under center stuff. It felt like they got away from that as the season went along, and I thought like the play action worked really well under center because the run game is strong. And I love that he said this offseason he wants to run more, and he thinks he should run more, because to me, if he's carrying the ball just 2 more times per game, you're going to get a good yards per carry average, which he always does. And it's going to just remind the linebackers that, hey, I might pull this ball on this handoff to James Conner, and it helps the number situation running it. So I think there's a lot of potential on offense. I still think they need a speed receiver to help open things up. I don't love the makeup of the wide receiver room where you don't have that guy. I think it showed last year that you didn't have the over-the-top guy, and they could really kind of crunch down on the Trey McBrides and Marvin Harrisons and not have to keep a safety over the top. So I would like to see that, and I would like to see more big plays coming from that, because you did see that a lot with Cliff Kingsbury, Christian Kirk going deep, Hollywood Brown. They tried it a lot. They weren't successful a lot, but at least the idea was there to throw it deep. And I do believe in Kyler's deep ball. I know his numbers have been up and down, throwing it downfield, but I think he's got accuracy and not crazy arm strength, but it's good enough. So yeah, I think he can be top 10 quarterback again this season. And my question is the guard situation going to be good enough? And can they find that speed receiver in the draft?
Right. I think those are the 2 moves, if we're going to bring up, that the Cardinals didn't necessarily make. They did bring Zay Jones back on, I believe, a 1-year deal. They haven't made any other moves as far as bringing back someone like a Will Hernandez, who's coming off of a pretty nasty injury at almost 30 years old. He hasn't seen anyone sign him in the free agent market. They do bring back Evan Brown, but like you're saying, it does seem like there's 1 or 2 moves. Do you think that these are areas that the Cardinals could address through the draft and after the draft, or is there one move you'd have liked to have seen the Cardinals make that they really didn't in addressing some of those needs?
I think the guard position is a big one, and I think you're right. Like, maybe there is this agreement with Will Hernandez. Like, once you're healthy, we'll bring you back, because Will Hernandez has been awesome the last 2 seasons. You look at like the advanced analytics, he's up there in pass block win rate, run block win rate. I mean, he's been a really good guard the last couple of years. I'd be happy to slot him in. And you think back to like that New England game when they had all 5 of their offensive linemen healthy, or I'm sorry, the Buffalo game, the season opener last year, and it felt really good. And then everybody got hurt, it seemed like, at some point during the season. But I'm happy with rolling back the starting 5 that they had, because I think it did look good when everybody was out there. The question is, can Will Hernandez come back and be the same guy? And if not, do I trust Isaiah Adams to be that starter? Probably not yet. I'd like to maybe get somebody in the draft. Where is Kelvin Banks going to be there at 16? He's a guard/tackle. Maybe he can play guard as a rookie, eventually move to right tackle. So to me, yeah, I think that 1 guard spot, and then like we talked about, speed wide receiver, those are the 2 that I still think they haven't addressed that they need to offensively.
Yeah, no, those seem to be areas of concern. One thing real quick, we got Calais Campbell, the longtime Arizona Cardinal who spent an entire second career away from the Cardinals after his first 8 years. He's back now in the desert. Do you feel like this is enough to be an impact player? He signed for what seems to be starter money for at least the 1-year deal from the incentives he's going to be able to get. How is it having big 93 or whatever number he may end up, since I think it's going to be Justin Jones or Bilal Nichols is set up with that right now? How are the feelings, at least for fans who are going to be able to see like the one guy who still played in that Cardinal Super Bowl in 2008 back in Cardinal red on the sideline?
Yeah, and like it's not just nostalgia. You look at the numbers, what he did last year, and I think he was number 2 against the run among defensive linemen or something like that, according to Pro Football Focus. Like the dude can still play. I know he's 38, 39, but he's just like such a massive person that he just clogs up the middle of the run. Nobody can move him no matter how old he is. Maybe he'll play till 45 like Brady because nobody can move him on the interior like that. And he's got pass rush juice. So probably my favorite move overall was Calais at such a good deal. And a guy like that, maybe he falls off a cliff and can't do it this season. But the fact that he hasn't done that yet, I mean, you worry about that with every guy, but he's looked good, and I think it was a fantastic signing. And yeah, I mean, people will love it from a nostalgia standpoint, but also I think he can really play.
No, it's something that's been very exciting, I think, for Cardinals fans. You get to break out those old jerseys if you still have them back in your closet. Let's talk a little bit. Now, I'm going to bring in one of my former bosses when I was an intern for the Arizona Rattlers, who always would talk about when there was news to give, he'd say, do you want the good news or the bad news? And a lot of times we say, well, what's the bad news? And so in this case, he would say, the Arizona Cardinals ranked dead last, 32nd in the NFLPA report card. And we would ask him, all right, well, what's the good news? He would then say, there is no good news. Like that would be his incentive to say, you got to go and fix some of this. I think maybe you could say there's nowhere to go but up. But right now, a lot of Cardinals fans are looking at their team, supporting their team. Players are grading that the team has just not been as supportive of them overall. I know that you spent some time with the team before, but I think the big question is what may be one thing that the Cardinals and the ownership can do to be able to boost the NFLPA ranking for the future and bring Arizona kind of back into something that the fans, the players can feel respect for and be able to feel proud of.
I mean, it's very easy to see. They lay it out really easily. Like, are you treating players well? Are you treating the families well? So I think it's just a matter of looking at that stuff and doing a good job. The facility that they're talking about building, I think that'll be important. Are they going to give it the bells and whistles and make it look really state of the art, or will they cut corners and just kind of do what they have to do and then still be within the lower, quarter of the league, even though they have a new facility? So definitely interested to see how that comes about. They haven't been known for spending money, and it would be awesome if that changed, because when you don't have a salary cap on stuff like facilities, you think you'd want to build those up, have somewhere the players want to be. That would help from a competitive advantage standpoint. So to me, that's big. Like, what are they going to do money wise with this facility?
Right. Yeah. You talk about like the salary cap. We've seen the Cardinals be able to spend money in previous on different players, keeping Larry Fitzgerald long-term, signing that big Kyler Murray contract, despite there being more drama than a soap opera. It felt like that offseason before it was done, and a lot of drama that followed. They did at least reach out and made Trey McBride the highest paid tight end in the NFL. He's just 25 years old, seems to be kind of entering the prime of his career. This is something that I think Cardinals fans can say, yeah, like, good. That's a good like first step, but that's also the expected step. What you're talking about is kind of having to go above and beyond for different players, recognizing that some guys are going to come out of a college program that does so much better for them than an actual NFL program like Arizona. It's definitely different. Talk a little bit about McBride, and then maybe some of why a lot of the struggles Arizona has been overcoming that narrative of not spending money, not treating players well. Just some of what we've seen over the years has been that narrative of the same old Cardinals that hasn't quite fit with some of the moves they've made.
Yeah, and like, you're not like the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Florida Marlins. Like they will spend money, and because it's a salary cap league, I mean, they will go up to the salary cap like everybody else, but they're not like the Eagles or certain teams that will kind of game the salary cap. The Rams do it. They'll kind of kick contracts down the road and really go for it every year. The Cardinals haven't been known to do something like that. They're more traditional. So that I think that is a disadvantage, where they're not going to go above and beyond every year, which I think they should. When they feel like, hey, we have a championship team, let's really go spend more cash, push it down the line and figure it out. Like the Eagles just won a Super Bowl paying all their guys and they kept on paying them this offseason. So I think some of it's legit, but also, yeah, some of it is like they did pay McBride, they did pay Kyler. They're not they're not these baseball teams that are just non-competitive. They are at least competitive, but I think the NFL sets it up like that where you have to be. There's a salary cap floor. I mean, if any team didn't go for it, it'd be dumb because you're making a bunch of money and this is the way to be competitive because it's such a parity-driven league. So obviously they've got work to do. There's ways to be more competitive, spending more money. But yeah, they're not the Florida Marlins of the NFL.
Absolutely. No, and it feels like this is kind of the year for Arizona. Like there's a bunch more that they've invested after 2 down years, which you knew you weren't going to have a healthy quarterback. You knew that you were probably going to need to be able to make some improvements. The team, you can't say that they don't have incoming movie. There's been a lot of complaints about some of whether the casitas or seating or other spending things that the team has done. You kind of are wanting a lot of it to be able to pay off in terms of a playoff berth, a playoff appearance, probably even a playoff win or so would be within the expectations. Do you think that that is the expectation that we should have for this Cardinals team this year? Or is this a place where you look at the rest of the NFL, how the team has been built? Are we kind of like falling into that Arizona sports fan trap of like this year is going to be the year and then there usually turns out to be a form of disappointment? Or is there more that fans, do you think, can expect heading into this season, provided that the Cardinals are able to stay relatively healthy for the most part and don't have some crazy unforeseen issues that no one could possibly project happen?
I mean, from an oddsmaker's perspective, they're still underdogs to make the playoffs. But you look at it like timeline wise, if you spent 2 years completely rebuilding this thing and stripped it all the way down, planned for this, like this should be the year where you're competitive. So I think winning a playoff game should be the expectation. Like if I go 10-7 and make a wild card and lose in the first round by 21 points, I don't think that's a successful season. Like I think they need to be a legitimate team in the NFC because how long is realistic to rebuild? I don't think anybody gets 3 years in the NFL to continually rebuild. Like you have to show it at some point. And I do think the team is better than it's been the last couple of years, but like I said, the odds makers don't love this team. I think their over-under is like 8.5, which is a 500 team, which to me isn't super exciting if you're in year 3 of a rebuild. Like you look at a team like the Commanders or some other teams, the way the Lions built it up and became a juggernaut. Like if you're intentionally down for 2 years, you're accumulating draft picks, you're setting the salary cap up. To me, in year 3, you should be striking.
No, I agree. And like we said, when it says never tell me the odds, like Han Solo famously once said, you got to look at it and say, well, yeah, Commander's great example. No one would have been able to predict or would have probably even bet on, you would have made a lot if you did, them beating the Lions, going to the NFC Championship game, considering how low the odds were to start the season. And at the same time, you talk at least about how like a lot of times you look at the odds, you try to see what the course correction is. A lot of the people last year we talked about with Arizona were a little bit low on them, like probably about 6 or 7 wins. They were able to exceed their odds, but when they were first place and ready to kind of close up the NFC West, didn't quite achieve some of those expectations. I think this is, like you said, definitely going to have to be the year to break past that barrier. Let's go and shift now, talking a little bit about the 2025 NFL draft. This is a unique draft because in previous years, we've seen a lot of quarterback movement, some trades. There's always a lot of drama and surprise every single year. And there's always been a Cardinals team picking somewhere in the top couple of picks that made it pretty easy to pick out who the Cardinals were going to have on the board when they would draft, or if they were going to move back and get some draft capital, some of the guys they may be able to target. This year, there seems to be one quarterback who's going early. The odds right now are, I think it's plus 20,000 for Cam Ward to go to the Titans. There's some other talented players that are out there. How does this overall draft stack up? Because I think last year it was the offensive heavy draft. There was not a player taken, I think, in the first 15 or so picks on the defensive side of the ball. This year seems very different. It's very heavy on defensive line, heavy on running backs. We haven't seen as many corners, and we certainly are still going to see some quarterbacks that go in the first round. But what do you see as some of the strengths of this overall draft? Because it does feel like for some reason this isn't quite the pizzazz that we've seen in past years, and it's probably because of the lack of knowing where these quarterbacks are really going to go.
Yeah, it feels like defensive tackle edge is a big part of what's going to go on early in the first round, and obviously good for the Cardinals. Like if you've got a good edge player, a good defensive tackle, like they could use those guys. But I also think the stuff they did in free agency could give them a shot at, like we've talked about, an offensive lineman. I don't think you'd go receiver in the first round, but hey, if they love a guy, then you could still do it, because I do think we get caught up in needs a lot. But when you're talking about number 16 overall, like just take the player you love and you'll figure it out, because roster needs will change a lot in the next 2-3 years. So I do feel like it is a defensive heavy draft, especially early on, and that's probably most likely, but definitely wouldn't rule out, the Cardinals looking at offense.
No, that's something I think that will be really interesting. The current favorites, I believe, I can pull up the DraftKings Sportsbook bets right now, but the current favorite, I believe, is at plus 175 for the Cardinals to take a defensive lineman or edge, which I think it's interesting that they put those two together. And then after that is going to be offensive line. So it does seem like the trenches are definitely the favorite. For those wondering, it's like that means that you'd probably have to bet $100 to make $175 is kind of how those odds would work. Is this something that we think the Cardinals are more likely just to say, hey, they have some needs at defensive tackle? Calais isn't. No, we always say Calais isn't getting any younger. I just find it fascinating, at least, that this is like the second time the Cardinals have had Calais Campbell on their roster, and there's questions about an Ole Miss defensive tackle that's like kind of sitting there potentially for them with that pick. What do you feel as far as with the position, how this draft stacks up? Is the Cardinals defensive line and who they go after, are those guys going to be there, or could you see some of these edge rushers coming off of the board and they have to swerve in a different direction, as the odds seem to have kind of favored that over the last couple of days?
Isn't that crazy that Robert Kimdichie was supposed to be the replacement for Calais Campbell, and now, 10 years later or whatever, Calais is still in the league and he's back with the Cardinals.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how it's going to go. I do think I think there will be a couple defensive line options for sure. It's just hard to know, like some of those guys, like a Mike Green that's got the character concerns, and there's certain guys that have their pluses and minuses, and how do the Cardinals feel about them? So like I agree with the DraftKings where defensive line feels like the most likely pick. It's just hard to know exactly how they're going to grade them out, who they like, who's going to fall. Like we talked about earlier, like it's going to be a pretty unpredictable draft after the top four. I don't know. I still think like guard or tackle could be in play. I think I might be in the minority there, but that's probably something that I would expect more so them going offensive line than defensive line, which isn't the thinking of everybody for sure.
Yeah, I kind of agree. You look at some of the defensive linemen, you've got Dalvin Tomlinson on a 2-year deal. You do bring in Sweat to be able to pair with the draft pick and Darius Robinson. We've kind of seen that, yes, that defensive lineman could rotate in and get like some reps for the most part, similar to what we saw at the end of last season for Darius. But they've got 3 right tackles on their roster. One, I think, being Cameron, I believe it's Williams, or at least the guy who was out of Texas last year, the 5th round pick. And then they also have a 1-year deal for Kelvin Beachum, and they've got a 1 year left on Jonah Williams' contract. We'll probably see, I think, a little bit more this week. I remember in 2023, before the draft, everyone's looking at Will Anderson. People are looking at even Tyree Wilson. There was all sorts of trade up, trade back rumors going on. And DJ Humphries wasn't quite healthy in that first OTA setup. And that was kind of the first, maybe they need to get a long-term tackle in here outside of Paris Johnson. And they did bring in, I think I should say outside of DJ Humphries, they brought in Paris Johnson. And he's kind of been stalwart, hasn't been necessarily all-pro, but it's so competitive to make all-pro in the NFC that you're probably going to at least be able to say so far through 2 years, you're liking what you're seeing out of that pick. Do you think that this is one of those areas where the Cardinals could take a tackle and maybe even sit them for a year, or put them into open competition, assuming Jonah Williams isn't, going to be out or having some more injury issues to start the season. It kind of feels like there's two camps of philosophy that are, one is just build the line, build the trenches. The other is, hey, if there's a top cornerback, if you get a speed wide receiver, you take those. I think we both lean on the trenches side, but like you said, it does kind of feel like if you're going to take an offensive tackle, this is probably the year to do it early because there's depth on the defensive line all throughout this draft. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of depth at the offensive tackle spot after the first 40 picks.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, if you take a tackle, they can play guard for a season, and then, Jonah will leave this offseason and you put him out at tackle. Like, obviously, Paris played on the right side and then moved to the left. Like, you can move guys around as rookies, and they can figure it out for a little bit, unless it's just a horrible skill set thing to play guard. But most of those tackles can move to guard and do a pretty good job because they're so athletic usually and have long arms. So I think that's definitely a possibility. And like you mentioned, cornerback, I think cornerback could definitely be in play too. It's one of those, like we talked about, best player available, and you need an outside corner. I know Garrett has been great in the slot, and Max Melton has definitely shown some stuff, but Max Melton's not a finished product, and Sean Murphy-Bunting is on his way out probably after this season. So corner could be in play, offensive tackle, defensive line, like those definitely would be the top three.
Yeah, it definitely seems like those could be areas they could address with those first 3 draft picks. Let's talk a little bit with some of the different props. As far as this draft goes, there's some interesting ones. Like I've seen quarterback, wide receiver, and running back all currently are at plus 2.5. So you're kind of betting on whether there's 2 or 3. Quarterbacks are always interesting. Running backs, this is the first year in a while it feels like we could get multiple first round running backs that could be able to hit. Most of it seems to be like plus 15.5 or so, at least for defensive linemen, pretty close like that for offensive linemen as well. Is there a draft prop that you think that people should be jumping onto that could be at least something that's overrated, underrated? I kind of like the idea of going the under for 2.5 quarterbacks myself for this year's draft, just knowing that we don't know if teams are going to be spending premium picks on the likes of a Jackson Dart or even Shedeur Sanders. Doesn't seem like he's a first round lock. It just only may take 1 or 2 teams though to be able to change that.
Yeah. See, I'd actually go over on that one. And I hear you, especially with like that Kenny Pickett draft. I think back to the Kenny Pickett draft where he was the only guy taken in the first when everybody thought there'd be like 3. So that could happen, but I don't know. Jackson Dart seems like he's getting some helium late in the process. And even Jalen Milroe, like everybody's talking about him now. He's as good of a runner as Lamar Jackson. And that's going to get people excited, even though he's so raw. And you think of like, look what happened with Lamar. He went in the very end of the first round. You get that 5th-year option out of him and see if he turns into something. And the risk is a lot lower at like pick 30, 31, 32. You're spending capital, but you're not spending a top 5 pick on a quarterback. So I think Dart or Milroe will go at the end of the first.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's go ahead and start kind of wrapping up with our show. Before we get to kind of our just predictions for what will happen on Thursday night, let's talk about we got 2 running backs, one out of U of A who seems like he'll maybe at the earliest go round 6 or 7. But a lot of people in Arizona are looking at Cam Skattebo, who is going to be drafted this year. Obviously, it's one of those players where a lot of Cardinals fans have said, oh, just take him early. He doesn't seem like he fits the NFL model in a very running back heavy draft. How do you feel like as far as the fit, where could he go? And then maybe the success rate, because his 40 was not fast. We've seen running backs who don't have a fast 40 do well. I kind of liken him to James Robinson, 5th round pick, who actually had 1,000 yards, did pretty well. Maybe there's a little bit more explosiveness you could see. How do you think that he fits it all as far as for where he could go in the draft, and any team favorites you think for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to go day 3. I don't think he runs fast enough. Like, you've seen what college stars could happen to them in the NFL when they just don't have the physical traits to do it. Like, it's just such a harder league. I do like that he can catch the ball. He's just a super good athlete. Like, he can do a lot of different things for you. So maybe he's special teams guy, 3rd down back, different things like that. But as much as I love him, and everybody does, I don't know. I need to see it at the NFL level before I believe that Skattebo can be a starter in the NFL.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. At some point, if you're a running back, you will start. It's just going to be the opportunity. Draft position does matter for when and how you get that opportunity. Let's close off today, Kyle. Let's make that absolute prediction. Say the Cardinals are picking, whether it's a trade back, a trade up, staying at 16. If you had to pick today as far as with what the Cardinals would do with that pick, what would you go with?
I haven't looked super closely, which I probably should because we're 2 days away. But is Calvin Banks mocked in that area?
He has been mocked in that area. There's
That's
some who say that he's going to go as early as top 10, as late as like in 18, 19, 20. So it's kind of the right range for him.
okay. That's my expert opinion, which I just threw together right now. I'll say Calvin Banks at number 16.
Yeah, I'll go with Simmons at 16. I think that the edge rushers, you want one of those guys to fall would be awesome. I thought Simmons seems to also fit for the exact same reasons as Calvin Banks Jr. I think that's something where it might be a little bit of a surprise with the favorite being defensive line and edge, but I think with how the draft plays out, I could 100% see them getting an offensive lineman. Kyle, thanks so much again for being able to join today. If you want to do a shout out to like where some of whether it's Cardinals fans, NFL fans alike are able to find some of your work and some of your content as we get into the NFL draft, which is, like you said, long time waiting for it. It's going to be here and over before we know it.
Yeah, like you said, I write for a few different sites, so easiest to just grab me on Twitter, _Kyle_Odegaard. I'll post my stuff there, and yeah, it should be a good draft. Should be fun, and I do think they need some pieces, so we'll see what they do. Obviously, people are going to be excited after a couple days of the draft, and I'm interested to see what they do and if they do anything big. I mean, obviously, there's trade candidates as far as veterans that are available. I don't think they'll pull the trigger on any of those guys, but if they do, that would signal something pretty big too. So we'll see how it all goes.
Absolutely. Awesome. Hey, Kyle, thanks so much for joining today, at least. This has been the Redbird Reboot podcast, folks. You've been rebooted right now. The NFL draft is around the corner. That means it's time for us to log off. Make sure you're following Kyle_Odegaard on Twitter/X. And thanks again for tuning in. Kyle, thanks for joining.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.